While many people may be excited about the prospect of a high-speed rail line coming to Ottawa in the future, residents in rural areas are expressing concern about what it could mean for their communities and farmland.
It'll basically bankrupt us. Rural Canada is not meant for city goers to have easier travel. It shouldn't be sacrificed for a few people to traverse Canada in a high-speed train.
60 meters wide, 10-foot fences bisecting family farms, blocking long established rural routes, trapping wildlife, and get this, no rural stations for those most affected. Just noise, expropriation, and lost livelihoods for city commuters to potentially save an.
Mark Carney is catching serious heat right now as Ottawa moves forward with a massive high-speed rail project, and this thing could change the country in ways people are not ready for. This isn't really about trains. It's about huge money on the line, risky timing, and everyday communities being the ones stuck dealing with the fallout. The deeper you look, the more this so-called nation-building project starts to feel like a high-stakes gamble driven by people far removed from real life. And it could blow up fast. Canada isn't just building a train here. Canada is basically being asked to sign off on a blank check, hand it over, hope for the best, and trust that something impressive shows up later. That's the real situation. Forget the polished images of fast, shiny trains cutting across the country. Forget the big promises about efficiency and cleaner travel in some future version of Canada. Strip all that down, and what you're left with is a simple question: can people trust the system to handle something this big responsibly? Because right now, that trust is looking shaky.
My money would be north of $200 billion by the time everything was completed. It's just some of the costs. There's the $200 billion, $90 billion, they say, which equals about $8,000 per family across from coast to coast. So there's an equity issue, right? Like, why should a family of four in British Columbia have to support the transit from Toronto to Montreal when they may never ride it and their family may have to pay $8,000?
Let's talk timing, because timing can make or break everything. This project isn't rolling out during a period of strong financial confidence or stability. It's happening while families are tightening their budgets, cutting back on groceries, delaying major purchases, and quietly dealing with rising financial pressure that doesn't get highlighted in official announcements. The numbers tell the story. Budget 2025 is projecting a $78.3 billion deficit for this year alone. And looking ahead, estimates suggest an average yearly deficit of around $64.3 billion over the next 5 years. That's more than double what was expected not long ago.
But it'll also create tremendous inconvenience in Eastern Ontario and in Quebec. Because a way that high-speed rail works is there aren't overland crossings. So you either have to go under the train or above the train, which costs tens of millions, if not more, which means there'll be relatively few crossings. So if you happen to live north or south of that tracks, and your school, your workplace, your church, or even perhaps more scary, your hospital is on the other side of that tracks, it could cost you half an hour, on your daily commute if you're going to work or if you're trying to get to a hospital. Just imagine an ambulance coming to try and get you and getting on both sides of that track. It could be an hour or more.
And right in the middle of all that, the plan is to move forward with a nearly 1,000-kilometer high-speed rail line between Toronto and Quebec City, with trains aiming to hit 300 kilometers per hour. So while people are being careful with everyday spending, there's a push for a massive project that could cost tens of billions before most people even see a benefit. That contrast is hard to ignore. Now let's get into the price tag, because this is where things really start to raise eyebrows. Early estimates from Ottawa itself put the cost somewhere between $60 billion and $90 billion based on earlier projections.
I think it's time for the Carney Liberals to get to work. You know, they've been in power for 11 years, including a year with Mr. Carney there, and what have they done? No pipelines approved, no major projects approved. The deficit is doubled. We have the worst food price inflation in the G7.
And that's just the starting point. That number doesn't fully account for land negotiations, legal challenges, design changes, rising costs, environmental requirements, contractor disputes, or the usual complications that come with projects this size. History shows a clear pattern with projects like this. The first number you hear is almost always the lowest it will ever be. Costs tend to climb, sometimes dramatically. So if early estimates are already pushing toward $90 billion before construction even begins, it's completely fair for people to wonder what the final bill could look like after delays. Disputes and cost increases stack up.
Students will be separated from their classrooms, workers that'll be separated from their offices, farmers separated from their fields, and patients, perhaps most troubling, separated from their hospitals. What guideline or restrictions are you putting on Alto in terms of how long between crossings?
And here's what makes it even more intense. The spending has already started. Ottawa has committed $3.9 billion just for the first 6-year development phase on top of hundreds of millions already allocated earlier. That means money is already moving out the door long before the project is fully locked in or delivering results. And that alone is raising a lot of serious questions. That means billions are already being poured into this project and not into tracks or stations. The money is going into planners, lawyers, consultants, engineering designs, land strategy reports, and layers of administration most people will never even see. So, here's the real question people want answered. How much will be spent before one regular person actually gets to ride this train? Because right now the numbers suggest years of heavy spending with nothing visible to show for it.
The government, and I guess to their credit, have come out and said that $90 billion, or as we said, might balloon up to double that, might be $200 billion, will never, ever be recovered by fares. The whole reason why you build a pipeline is so that the government is a net winner in terms of revenue, right? Even TMX, which the government will woefully overspend on, we will get that money back as taxpayers. The government also has been out front. They've said up front, you will never get that money back. That $1 million will never, and that $90 billion will never, ever be recovered.
Then comes the fairness issue, and this one hits hard. The project is being promoted, as something that benefits the entire country. The argument points to a corridor of around 18 million people, representing roughly 40% of Canada's economic activity, and frames it as a national investment. But not everyone is buying that story. Critics are looking at this as a corridor-focused project where the benefits stay concentrated in one region while the costs are spread across the entire country. That's where frustration starts building.
They're not even hosting consultations in our community. It's going to cost at least $90 billion, cost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars for every family in my community, and they're not even holding meetings to discuss this. So this isn't responsible stewardship.
People in Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, Atlantic Canada, and rural areas far from the rail line are all contributing financially, yet for many of them, there's no clear direct benefit in return. From their perspective, this doesn't feel like a shared national project. It feels like a bill with no payoff, and that perception alone is enough to create serious tension. Now shifting to Mark Carney, because this is where things get even more intense. The project was originally announced under Justin Trudeau in early 2025, but Carney is now the one standing behind it in 2026. Even if he didn't design every part of it, he's now responsible for defending it. And that means he also carries the pressure and criticism that comes with it. If Carney is trying to present himself as a steady, financially disciplined leader, this project becomes a major test, because instead of stepping away from past patterns of large spending, he's now backing a project that's raising concerns about cost, risk, and long-term impact. That makes it harder to draw a clear line between old approaches and new ones, and people are noticing that.
Some people in the area say there are a long list of concerns that the community has about the high-speed rail line that they feel will bring no benefit to their rural area and impact the way they can farm and live their lives.
You imagine, right, that train comes through here, right, between us and our forest. We wouldn't be able to access our forest anymore.
Now here's where things really start to spark debate. Canada's Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, is facing questions. not because of direct actions tied to the project, but because of a potential perception issue involving connections. His partner, Anne-Marie G., holds a senior role at Alto, the organization managing the rail project. That connection has raised concerns from critics about whether proper boundaries and transparency measures are in place. Officials have stated that safeguards were set up, including a conflict screen, and that the structure of oversight places the project under a different department. From a technical standpoint, those explanations may address formal requirements, but public perception doesn't always follow technical explanations, and that's where the pressure builds. When large amounts of public funding are involved, even the appearance of close connections can raise questions in people's minds. And in situations like this, perception can carry just as much weight as official rulings. Trust becomes fragile, and once doubt starts to spread, it's hard to contain.
And in fact, a recent study out of McGill said, in addition to that $90 billion and the interest on that, because every dollar that we spend, we pay interest on as Canadian taxpayers, we will also have an ongoing loss. They project it's somewhere around $2 billion every year it operates. And so this will be a money loser, right? Unlike a pipeline or a ring of fire that will create revenue, like as you said, that will allow us to support our social safety network, right? As our deficit and our debt get bigger and bigger and bigger, we put in danger some of the many social programs that Canadians value.
Finally, there's the legal framework pushing this forward. Bill C-15 received royal assent on March 26, 2026, and it includes the High-Speed Rail Network Act, laying out the structure needed for the project to move ahead. That means, at a legal level, the foundation is now in place, and the next phase is already beginning to take shape. That means the government now has real legal authority to move this corridor forward, and that includes powers tied to approvals and land acquisition. This is where the conversation shifts fast. It's no longer just about travel times, it's about control, decisions, and who ends up carrying the impact. Because when a project like this moves ahead, it raises serious questions. Whose land gets affected? Whose community gets reshaped? Which farms, roads, and properties suddenly fall inside a line drawn on a map far away? For the people living along that path, this doesn't feel like a vision. It can start to feel forced. What looks like progress from a distance can feel very different up close.
A name that's basically synonymous with corruption scandals. They're set to pocket $3.9 billion right off the hop before a single track is laid to plan it. Don't be swindled by terms like progressive and innovative. This is a boondoggle in the making. California disaster, Canadian style, paving over generational farms and hunting land in the process.
And that's exactly why many rural communities along potential routes are not celebrating. There's real concern about being left out of the benefits while still dealing with the consequences. Some fear they won't even get a station, no local access, no economic boost, just disruption. And even more concerning, they feel they may not have a strong voice in decisions that could permanently change their surroundings. High-speed rail isn't something that blends quietly into the background. It requires controlled corridors, fencing, separated crossings, and strict boundaries. That means land that was once open and connected can suddenly become divided. Areas that people moved through freely could end up restricted. Also, faster travel between major cities can happen somewhere else. So while urban areas gain speed and convenience, rural areas are often left dealing with uncertainty, disruption, and difficult changes to land that may have been in families for generations.
Do we go at street level? Do we go underground? Do we go in the air? When you have a high-speed train, we cannot have any grade crossing. It has to be very, very safe. And so with that comes all kind of consideration.
One of the biggest considerations is the price tag. It's expected to cost up to $90 billion and take 18 years to complete.
And here's where it gets even more challenging. The impact starts long before construction even begins. Right now, landowners near possible routes are stuck in a tough position. Do they invest in their property or hold back? There's no clear answer. Farmers can't confidently plan future seasons if there's a chance their land could be affected. Small businesses can't fully prepare when there's an unknown project hanging over their decisions. This kind of uncertainty can slow down local economies quietly, but significantly. Sometimes the financial impact of a project begins years before any physical work starts. And that's what's happening here. Communities are already feeling pressure without asking to be part of the situation. Now let's talk about the environmental angle, because this is often presented as a major benefit. The project is described as cleaner travel, lower emissions, and a modern alternative to short-distance flights. And while that argument has merit, it doesn't tell the full story.
Public consultations have been sneakily handled, closing in just a few short weeks on March 29th, with many of those directly affected saying they're just hearing about it now. Couple this with Prime Minister Mark Carney's Bill C-15, which grants the feds sweeping powers to fast-track projects just like this one, override rules and expropriate land. It's a perfect setup for potential conflicts of interest, especially given Carney's ties to Brookfield and the ongoing scrutiny around private investments in public infrastructure like the Alto high-speed rail.
Because large-scale construction brings its own environmental challenges: land clearing, disruption of natural areas, fragmentation of habitats, pressure on farmland, and the heavy use of materials required to build something this massive. So while the long-term goal may focus on cleaner travel, the short-term reality on the ground can look very different. And that contrast matters. Then there's the big economic question. Will enough people actually use it? High-speed rail works best in regions with dense, consistent demand, and that's where doubts start to come in. Some question whether Canada's geography and travel patterns can support a system of this scale without ongoing financial support. And here's the real risk. It's not that nobody uses it. It's that enough people use it to keep it running, but not enough to justify the full cost. That creates a situation where the project becomes too established to stop, but too expensive to fully support itself. And when that happens, it can turn into a long-term financial commitment that stretches across multiple governments. At that point, it's no longer just it's no project, it becomes an ongoing obligation. Right now, multiple pressures are building at the same time: rising costs, ongoing deficits, questions about oversight, and uncertainty in affected communities. And all of this is happening while billions are already being spent before a single piece of track is fully in place. And that's the situation for today on Yesterday Canada. If you want more updates like this, drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.